Order. Today is Monday, October 27, 2014. We're meeting for the purposes of the Committee of the Whole. I would ask that you all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Cyprian, I'd ask that you call the roll to establish a quorum.
Gudenkauf?
Here.
Deuter?
Here.
Dunn?
Here.
Leader? Blumsky?
Here.
Graham?
Here.
York?
Here.
Levin?
Here.
Healy?
Here.
Conquest? Kennedy?
Here.
Mulliner?
Here.
And Wagner.
Here.
12 present, 1 absent.
12 present, 1 absent. We have a quorum. On to announcements. Any announcements? Alderman Gudenkauf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to reiterate that Marty Deuter and I are hosting a First Ward Town Hall meeting on Thursday, November 13th at the Elmhurst Public Library from 7 till 9 p.m. And again, this is not an Elmhurst Public Library sponsored event. Thank you.
Okay, any other announcements? I'll take the opportunity. On Monday, November 10th, 2014, there will be a drug awareness, the new face of heroin, it's not what you think, at Superior Ambulance. They're co-sponsoring, along with the Elmhurst Commission on Youth, an educational program regarding heroin. That is Monday the 10th, 7 to 9 at Superior Ambulance at 395 Lake. No other announcements? Seeing no other announcements, we'll go with public comments. Clerk Cyprian, at this time, is there anybody who has signed up for public announcements? Public comment. Is there anybody at this time who did not have an opportunity to sign in on our sign-in sheet, which is usually on the back table back there, but wishes to address the council? Anyone? Raise your hand. Ms. Jordan, you want to address the council?
Oh, you don't?
Just checking. Okay. Sure. Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 4, business before the committee. Review of fiscal year 2015 budget. As the council will recall, we kicked this off late last Monday night, got through 1 or 2 items, and here we are. That having been said, I will turn it over to City Manager Grabowski. Anything you want to add before we jump right in?
Just that we will start with the museum. We have a number of museum people here tonight, along with the foundation. And so with that, I would turn it over to Ms. Jordan.
1 second, Ms. Jordan. Okay, and before you get started, as a reminder, I ask the alderman, when appropriate and when possible, identify page and line item when we do get to the question and answer portion. Ms. Jordan, you have the floor. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It just seems like it was a short year ago. I was here newly elected, and it just whizzed by. So my name is Kathy Jordan, and I am the Heritage Foundation president. And what I'd like to do, because we are a new organization, I always like to reiterate who we are and what we do and our mission before I go into, I think, a very successful year that we've accomplished. In 2007, the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation was established as a non-for-profit 501c3 organization created by the merger of the former Elmhurst Historical Museum Foundation and the City of Elmhurst Historical Commission. The focus of the citizen-driven group is to bring community support to the Elmhurst Historical Museum and the Churchville Schoolhouse. The mission of the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation is to stimulate broad-based support for local history, the Elmhurst Historical Museum, and the Churchville Schoolhouse through advocacy, education, and fundraising. We currently have 17 foundation board members and can have no more than 21 members. 7 foundation board members are appointed by the mayor, and 14 other candidates are nominated by a nominating committee of the foundation board. I have several foundation board members here this evening. I'd like to introduce them. Mike LaCicero, Vice President, John DeVries, Kathy Siegert, Randy Orion, and I don't know if anybody else came in. No. they could give a little wave. I have to say they are dedicated, committed people who give a lot of leadership, and we really appreciate all of their hard work. The Heritage Foundation Board is a working board and very result-driven. For me, not to recognize their accomplishments tonight would be like giving you a gift and not opening up that box and gift for you to see. So tonight, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be opening up that box and letting you see what they have accomplished, or we have accomplished. This has been a very busy year, and 2015 will be a very exciting year. The Visionary Voices Gala, held on November 2nd, 2013 at Drury Lane, generated $30,000 to be added to the Visionary Voices campaign, brought together 200 people, not only raising funds, but building relationships and partnerships with the Art Museum, Elmhurst Garden Club, City Center, York Theater, the business community, and community leaders, supporting the Gala and Visionary Voices campaign through monetary donations, in-kind donations, or actively serving on the Gala or campaign committee. We also want to thank the mayor and all the aldermen and other elected officials who attended and supported this Gala. These relationships and partnerships are invaluable to our foundation. Through our fundraising efforts, the foundation has provided support to meet expenses associated with the museum's exhibits, as well as some of the museum's education programs open to the public. We are financially sound and continue to stretch our dollars to the maximum, using creative approaches with our resources, donations, and partnerships. We have funded $20,000, or 80% of the annual exhibit programs at the museum. $3,500 for public programs, including summer kickoff and the Churchville Schoolhouse Autumn Open House. $3,300 for development and fundraising consultant fees. $25,200 for the half-time salary of the community program coordinator. $10,000 for the part-time weekend position. $50,000 for the exhibits development for the new exhibit, by all accounts, the Elmhurst Story. In addition, the Elmhurst Foundation has provided $4,500 for buses for school field trips. This funding has almost doubled from last year. We feel this is a valuable service to the children of our community. Without the offer of free busing, school groups would not be able to make visits to the museum or the schoolhouse. The community-wide Ruth Strand poster contest had close to 400 posters submitted from District 205 schools: Hawthorne, Lincoln, Jefferson, Conrad Fisher, Edison, Field, Emerson, and Jackson schools. Grants of $100 were given to the local schools that had participated in the Ruth Strand poster contest. The expenses related to the poster contest are paid by an endowment from the Ruth Strand Fund to promote the study of local history. Our membership program has held a solid number of 203 memberships, equaling approximately 350 people, not including children. A 2-year membership pilot program was implemented this year, with 104 memberships being purchased. This 2-year program has been very well received. It saves time, materials, and money in the renewal process while adding continuity in our membership program. Membership renewal and retention is continual and ongoing and is used as a tool to cultivate donors. The most significant number regarding membership is that out of 203 members, 101 were also donors. This demonstrates how membership and development work hand in hand, cultivating donors. Another significant number is that the support from the city is the strongest that we have ever experienced. I love saying this. We have 8 aldermen who are members, 4 aldermen are donors, and the city clerk, the mayor, city treasurer, city manager are all members and donors. We are only missing 2 aldermen, and I plan on putting a little charm hex on them tonight so that hopefully we can get 100% participation. Your support to our foundation is very critical. Our governance committee is always soliciting and vetting potential board members. This year, we added 5 new highly qualified people to our board. The committee continues to review and modify the bylaws, incorporated standing rules and guidelines, gift acceptance guidelines, a board self-evaluation, board of directors job descriptions, and expectations, and they are always looking for ways to make us a stronger and better board. The Elmhurst Museum staff is continuing to review, modify, and update the strategic plan for 2005. Staff, 3 foundation members, and city manager Jim Grabowski have been involved with this project, and upon completion of the updated strategic plan, the Heritage Foundation will have a retreat and develop short-term and long-term goals to support the new strategic plan. It is critical that we work together in order to succeed. The foundation and our development committee took on the task of a capital campaign, Visionary Voices. This was the foundation's first capital campaign to raise $250,000 for a new exhibit about Elmhurst history. This total provides $150,000 for the new exhibit and $100,000, which is the normal 2-year operating assistance provided to the museum by the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation. In the spring of this year, we reached our goal of $250,000 for the originally planned exhibit. The Foundation Board approved a $50,000 extension of the campaign to add a high-tech interactive map that will be one of the most exciting elements of the new exhibit, filling the entire second floor of the Glass Mansion. The Elmhurst Heritage Foundation is proud to announce that the Visionary Voices campaign is very near to reaching its new goal of $300,000 and couldn't be more excited to soon unveil the new exhibit with the added high-tech interactive map. The new exhibit, by all accounts, The Story of Elmhurst, will take shape between October and January of this year. The original opening date was scheduled for November, but has been delayed due to the installation of the new HVAC system at the Glass Mansion. The new public opening date is February 28, 2015. As a point of information, just recently, a special donor made a $10,000 gift to the campaign, challenging us to secure matching gifts in any amount to achieve the final campaign goal of $300,000. Prior to this $10,000 donation, we needed approximately $27,000 to reach our goal. We are very close, and donations are still being accepted, and we are confident that we will meet our goal by the end of the year, if not sooner. The new exhibit will replace the Visions of Home exhibit installed in 1986, providing a variety of ways and techniques to tell the story of Elmhurst, including integration of the latest multimedia technologies, an enhanced photograph of York Street in the 1920s brought to life by actors portraying residents of that period, freestanding towers with wall displays, touch screens, interpretive panels, videos, artifacts, a biography wall, and a multiple voice approach, which will allow Elmhurst citizens to tell their own story, and an interactive tabletop map allowing visitors to time travel through Elmhurst. The new exhibit will be a real attraction for the museum and the city of Elmhurst and will serve and function as a continually evolving story with additions being made on a regular basis. Special receptions and tours are being planned for our donors and members during the week prior to the exhibit's public opening on February 28th. Be sure to look for your personal invitation from our foundation at the beginning of the new year. The receptions are a thank you to all donors and members who have made generous donations to the Visionary Voices campaign and have helped make, by all accounts, the story of Elmhurst a reality and a true cause for celebration. We invite you all to join us in this celebration of this achievement. We invite you all to attend a special sneak preview of the plans for the new exhibit on November 13th, 7 p.m. in the Education Center, presented by Lance Tauser, the museum curator. This event is free for foundation members, and guests are welcome. The Heritage Foundation continues to advocate, educate, and fundraise to make a department of the city the best it can be. We provide with the museum and schoolhouse cultural and educational opportunities for citizens and economic development opportunities for the city. We continue to reach out to the community, striving to promote, support, and preserve local history. I strongly believe that our Heritage Foundation is the extra added value to the city of Elmhurst, and that's something that you can't buy. Before closing, I would like to thank the museum staff for their support and hard work, and in particular for their leadership. I have to share with you, we don't have a development director. We have a part-time Ken Bartels, who helps and points us in the right direction. But I have to share with you, Brian goes on most of the lead donor interviews and has been very successful in securing some of the funds for the foundation. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that. Without their help, we would not be able to accomplish as much as we do, nor would we be able to continue to grow as a foundation. We are very excited about the new exhibit opening on February 28th and appreciate your continued support and the support of all who have helped create an engaging, educational, and unforgettable edition at the Elmhurst Historical Museum for our town, our history, and our heritage. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan.
Thank you, Kathy. That was a great summary of the work of the Heritage Foundation over the past year. It's been a big contribution to what the Historical Museum's been able to accomplish and what it will be able to accomplish in the future as well. I appreciate the chance to present the museum's budget proposal, which provides the necessary resources for exhibits and public programs and school services and reference services and other services that go on at the museum. Before looking at the budgets in the 2015 proposal, though, I'd like to report on the museum's performance during this year of 2014. Services continue to be provided 7 days a week, daytime and evening hours. They take place on-site at the Historical Museum. They take place at the schoolhouse. They take place at off-site locations such as schools, Elmhurst Public Library, City Center, assisted living facilities, and so forth. And I thank all of you who have participated by attending some of those programs and exhibits over the past year. The museum's exhibits continue to connect with people from surrounding communities as well as from our own Elmhurst audience. Surveys of visitors this summer indicated that 50 to 60 different communities are typically represented among museum visitors each month in the summer quarter. And the Sandberg exhibit from early this year, as you saw a couple weeks ago, won a national award. And this past summer's exhibit, the Sox versus Cubs show, is traveling to the Harold Washington Library as well as to some other institutions in the coming 12 to 18 months. Now, the museum also reaches out to community partners for help with our programming and exhibits. These partners in 2014 included the other Elmhurst museums, Elmhurst Public Library, Elmhurst Park District, the Village of Bensonville, Elmhurst College, City Center, and individual businesses here in town. We also look for partners to donate in-kind goods and services across the board. For instance, this year both the White Sox and the Kane County Cougars provided game tickets to us, which we subsequently gave away to promote the exhibit. A printer did a print job for us at no cost. Classic Cinemas arranged to premiere a baseball-themed movie on a certain evening in order to partner with us. And a contractor and an architect each provided services at no cost to the museum. Marketing and promotion during the year included feature stories in both the Sun-Times as well as the Tribune. Our quarterly calendar of events reaches Elmhurst residents, and our monthly e-blast is now distributed to about 1,800 addresses. The museum also cross-marketed with such entities as Pints here in Elmhurst, York Theater, the Kane County Cougars, the Park District, the library, and several others. As you know, facility improvements are taking place this fall through a State of Illinois grant for $283,000. New HVAC units are being installed to provide greater comfort, both for our visitors as well as a better environment for our collections and our exhibits. Institutional planning, as Kathy mentioned, has been ongoing this year, and the museum's updated strategic plan is almost completed. The plan identifies additional directions for growing museum revenues. It identifies a growth in services to schools, a new branding effort, opportunities for expanded public hours, and other initiatives. The updated plan relied on input by the public, by stakeholders outside the museum, by the foundation board members, and from the staff. And I plan to bring that plan to City Council shortly after the new year. And Alderman Healy, last year at our budget hearing on the revenue side, you challenged us to improve. So I want you and the other aldermen to know what's been done over the past year. 4 different schedules were created for you to show museum sources of revenue over the past year. One shows revenue from the donation box, gift shop, and program fees. While it shows an increase in the donation box, gift shop sales were down, primarily, I believe, because 2 exhibits in 2013 were really exceptional at the gift shop. Merchandising for both the Fred Lorenzen exhibit and the music photography exhibit included some one-of-a-kind goods that were not available elsewhere or in other stores. These were exhibit posters and photographs of celebrities that were autographed by both Mr. Lorenzen or Mr. Natkin. And they found a market among collectors and hobbyists. This wasn't the case with the Sox and the Cubs this summer. Also this summer, our credit card capability was down for a time, in eliminating credit card sales at the museum. There's also an ongoing need for online capability to take program reservations and also to conduct online sales from our gift shop. So we're working with IT to accomplish all of those goals. Obviously, we want to maximize each of these revenue streams, particularly through the best mix of merchandise in the museum store and through our program development. The schedule for grant revenue that you have shows an Illinois Humanities Council grant of $2,700 this past year to support public programs associated with the Sandberg exhibit. We're going back to IHC next year for a similar programming grant, and we'd expect to get it. One of the conditions of this type of grant support is that these grant-funded programs must be open free to the public. However, we also have program-based, or fee-based programs. An example of a fee-based program that's in the planning stage right now will be a tour of Elmhurst Quarry Flood Control Facility. We're working closely with DuPage County Stormwater to make this happen in 2015. Now, a third schedule that you have shows rental revenue and includes $9,000 in income from the 3 exhibits that were rented from the Historical Museum this year. It also shows 2 exhibits that are booked for rental in 2015 for a total of $6,000 in 2015 from this revenue source. Now, the 4th schedule shows designated donations to the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation. These were designated by the donor for a specific purpose at the museum. Listed on the schedule that you have are the programs and the exhibits that were sponsored in this manner. This year, we backed off from soliciting sponsorships through this type of designated gift, and instead we advised prospects to support the larger capital campaign project that we're in. Perhaps most significantly, I worked closely with Kathy and the foundation this year to not only reach that $250,000 capital campaign goal, but to surpass it. As Kathy reported, the campaign was extended to raise an additional $50,000 of private monies for the new Elmhurst exhibit. This $300,000 target provides $200,000 for the new Elmhurst exhibit entirely through private sources. The additional $100,000 raised in the $300,000 campaign is for the foundation's ongoing support of museum operations in 2013 and 2014. A growth and stability of the foundation is a cornerstone of the museum's stability. Each foundation dollar given to the city for museum purposes is $1 less needed from the city. So it's crucial for the foundation to flourish by attracting members and new donors. Over time, a percentage of these members and donors will develop strong commitments to the missions of both the foundation and the museum. And it's these individuals who will make the substantial gifts to help transform the museum. And we see that happening already, as Kathy mentioned, through memorials, bequests, gifts of stock, planned giving, and in particular the capital campaign. The very best example, which Kathy mentioned, is that recent donor who had already pledged to the campaign. She had already made a pledge to the campaign and paid the pledge. She came back with an offer of a 5-figure gift as a challenge to our annual year-end fund drive. So that fund drive is rolling out in the next couple weeks, and that 5-figure gift is being promoted as an incentive for others to give. We're building a strong track record of fundraising, and that track record is being noticed by both our donors and by our prospects. So now I'd like to review some of the budget figures. They're on pages 166 and 167 in the budget book. Beginning with salaries and wages, full-time salaries and wages. It's account 1002 on page 166. This provides for the continued operations of the museum with our current level of 3 full-time staff. The total for salaries and wages part-time, that's account 10-02, provides for the same part-time positions funded this year, as well as for an additional 9-hour per week employee to operate galleries during public hours on Saturday and Sunday. This position, as many of you may know, was previously funded for more than a dozen years. It went vacant in 2011 and was frozen. Since that time, other museum staff, both full-time as well as part-time, were assigned to weekend hours for gallery supervision and management. This past spring, the foundation came forth with a proposal to help reintroduce that part-time position at its previous level of about 9 hours a week, offering to fund the position through 2014. In addition to managing the galleries and supervising a volunteer on Saturdays and Sundays, that position is involved in other projects such as updating the museum's emergency response plan and also in the merchandise selection in the museum shop. Account 3052, professional services, provides for marketing and promotions at the museum, including such things as the printed quarterly calendar of events, press kits, posters, banners, flyers, general marketing, and branding services as well. Account 6029, historic preservation, is a new account. This account results from a restricted gift of more than $15,000 to the city. The gift consists of the assets of the Elmhurst Historical Society, which was dissolved last year. The board of the society transferred all assets to the city in the form of a restricted fund for use related to historic preservation. And you can see on page 168 that funds are budgeted for a historic structures survey along the York Street and Cottage Hill corridors here in Elmhurst. Account 30-39, the endowment, accounts for a portion of the foundation funds granted to the city for museum purposes. This includes the $20,000 to supplement exhibits that Kathy mentioned earlier, and also $5,500 for public programs. Unspent 2014 funds in this account will be rolled over for expenses of the new Elmhurst exhibit to be paid in early 2015. Now, the final budget will also include an additional $100,000 in both the expense and the revenue accounts for the foundation grant. This additional $100,000, along with the $100,000 shown in the 2014 budget, makes up the total foundation support for the new exhibit, $200,000. So I thank you for supporting museum services in the past year, and I want you to know that the staff, the board, and the foundation and I look forward to working together in 2015 to continue to extend the museum's reach and to improve our services. I'd be happy to take any questions or comments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Berhager and Ms. Jordan, for your comments and the intro. Any questions? Alderman Palomsky.
Just a quick question about the strategic plan. You're expecting that to be done in January?
Yes, we're wrapping it up here in December, I believe, and I would hope to bring it back in January to the Public Affairs Committee.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Levin.
Thank you. Ms. Jordan, you referred to a breakdown that you were going through of uses of foundation funds. Is that a document that you might be able to share with us?
Sure, if you'd like, I could supply that to you.
Okay. And then is there anything that references the value of the various in-kind contributions that have been received to assist the museum, whether it's ball tickets or architectural services, et cetera?
We always solicit a in-kind donor form from those types of donors. Sometimes they're responsive and return that. Sometimes they're not. We do compile that information at the end of the year. I'm sorry I don't have it here. It will be in our annual report.
Okay. And then you talked about the $250,000 capital campaign, of which $100,000 would be used for 2013, 2014 operations. Where's that money show up on your forms?
Sure. Well, on the city budget, is that what you're
Yeah.
asking? Okay. That shows up. Moment.
Maybe Marilyn can.
While Brian's looking for a couple of things, there are 4 revenue line items for the museum. They are on page 105 and page 106. On page 105, the charges for services, 341, and you'll see 21-00, program fees. So those are the programs that people will pay a fee for to participate in. On page 106, there are 3 line items, 13-00, oh, I'm sorry, yeah, 13-01, the museum rental income. Those are the exhibits that Brian mentioned that now we're able to rent to other organizations. And then 14-00, the museum trust fund, and that's the one that you, Alderman Levin, had really asked about. Those are the funds from the foundation.
Okay.
So you can see right now we had budgeted $63,500 for the 2015 year. That's the line item that Brian mentioned we will be adding another $100,000 to.
Okay.
And then the line item right below that, 15-00, is basically the gift shop items. So that's where we capture that revenue.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had. Thank you.
There was one other account that shows revenue on that same page, 106. Beneath the Historical Museum merchandise at 36-00 is Historical Museum donations and gifts. That's a donation box. It's a free will donation at the museum.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to preface my questions, and I do have several, with a couple comments. First, I am not one of the two that has cut a check. I am not one of those two. And second, and you know, this is very important, to the foundation members that are here, and thank you for taking the time, and thank you for, you know, indulging us with the week's delay. Originally, we were on the schedule for last week. As it turns out, that was probably a good thing that we moved it back because of the way the meeting went last week, but I thank you for being here. There is no doubt that the foundation does tremendous work for the city of Elmhurst and the Historical Museum. A lot of people put in a lot of hard work, and your efforts are truly appreciated by myself and certainly the city council and the city. So I want to make it clear that I think the foundation's doing a great job, a lot of hard-working, caring people. I wish we could get foundations for a lot of the other departments. You know, the Stormwater Mitigation Foundation would be great right about now. But thank you for your efforts. Now I'd like to get into some questions that I have. Couple budget-specific questions. Page 166, salaries, personal services for the museum. From the 2014 budget to the 2015 budget, it's roughly a 7.8% increase in budgeted amounts. What is that, what's driving that increase?
It's the 9-hour guy.
Alderman Healy, question?
That's account.
Oh, line item?
Yeah.
line item.
Page 166,
Personal
10-01, 10-02. That basically the first first two rows on the schedule.
Right.
Yes, Alderman Healy, correct?
That is correct.
Yes, the part-time position would be included in that, approximately $10,000.
Is that an addition?
I'm sorry. No.
If I might, that is not a new position. That is a part-time position that has been funded over the last few years from the foundation. That was something that when budget cuts were being made, the foundation stepped up to fund that. It was, I believe it was eliminated for a couple of years, and the foundation funded it for the past 3 years. After talking with some of the foundation members, I thought it was an appropriate time for the city to step back in and continue to fund that position.
Okay, so just a couple minutes ago, we heard that the foundation was kicking in $100,000 for operations. If I heard that correctly, and those dollars aren't going to be used for this part-time position, they're going to be used elsewhere.
You want to clarify that, Brian?
Sure. The $100,000 that was mentioned is earmarked for the new exhibit. There are additional funds from the foundation to pay for other operational expenses at the Historical Museum. About 30,000 of those funds are earmarked for the Community Programs Coordinator position, which shows up as an expense in salaries and wages.
Can I say something? Do you mind if I say something? Yeah. Just to rewind, you know, in 2008, when the economic downturn came, the foundation, really, our job isn't to take over operations or fund staff at all. And we took it upon ourselves to help the city and do some of that funding for the part-time position and also for that community program staff person. And we have been continued to do that, and we're trying to back out of that because we do not want to get involved with those operations for staff.
Alderman Healy?
Okay, so in a schedule that Director Gaston provided, because I want to make sure I get a complete understanding of the revenue sources and more importantly, the actual city dollar expenditures, the amount of money that the City of Elmhurst uses to fund the museum. So exclude grants, exclude, the efforts of the foundation. 2015, the projection was just short of $820,000. It was $819,270 would be actual city expenditures, which is an increase of roughly $20,000 from this year. Is that figure still accurate, given that the foundation is kicking in now some additional money?
Yes.
Yes, because the approximately 820,000 that you're looking at is, I'm taking out, or adding, let's see, in this case, I'm taking out that contribution from the foundation. I would just be taking out a bigger number.
Okay. So
So I would be adding the 100,000 into that line, but I would be backing out 163,500.
So the city contribution is not going from 819 to 719.
Correct.
It's staying at 820. We're just going to spend an additional $100,000 that the foundation is.
Providing, yes.
Okay, so when I heard Mr. Berghager say that every dollar the foundation raises is one less dollar that the museum spends, that's accurate, but we're still spending more money this year from the city's funds than not, because these extra dollars are above and beyond what we're spending.
That is correct.
Okay. Okay. I have more questions, but I'll yield until, I want to give somebody else a chance.
I think you're on a roll, Alderman,
Well,
Alderman Jordan.
thank you, Your Honor. If I could just get a further, to try and narrow it down on Alderman Healy's comments, is the part-time wages are up to 147. How many additional hours, say, per week, are we talking about a part-time worker being in there, I guess, just so we can understand that?
9 hours a week.
I know that's, how much is the total? I'm sorry.
The total dollar value?
No, the total part-time hours worked per week. We're going from what point to what point plus 9?
From 0 to 9.
Oh, we're going to 0 to 9, 9 hours? Is
Yes.
$147,000 a year?
I'm sorry, I'm
How many, what's the part-time dollar amount in hours now?
Yeah, how many hours was in the 134 was the 2014 budgeted amount? And I understand we didn't have that position filled all the time, is that correct?
Yeah.
So what was it for in 2014, and where are we going in 2015 as far as part-time hours?
Okay, the 2014 budget for part-time staff was $147,700. Is that correct?
That was, no, 214 was 134.2. 215 is 147.7.
I understand.
Pardon me.
I'm sorry, Alderman York. I believe what you're asking is how many part-time employees are with the museum and the number of hours that they work for that amount of $147,700.
Yeah, about how many hours a week are we talking about employment of a part-time person or persons?
Sure. Well, we have a registrar who works 18 hours. We have a marketing and communication specialist who works 18 hours a week. We have a program coordinator who works 18 hours a week. We have an administrative assistant who works 20 hours a week. We have a weekend position that works 9 hours a week.
And that's the one that's new.
That's correct.
So 54, 74. So we're going basically from 74 hours to 83 per week, is kind of what it,
Mhm.
that's what that pencils out to me, so.
That's right,
okay.
9 additional hours. There are no additional hours added onto the existing part-time staff.
And then as a follow-up to that, the contract staffing position, was that at all tied into this number, because that disappears?
What line item?
I'm sorry, 3092 on page 166.
Okay.
It was in it, actual was, or what we're thinking is gonna be actual is 24,400. That's going back down to 0. So is there some floppage? That's an official budget term.
That $24,000 figure for 2014 represents a contract that we entered into during a medical leave for our marketing and communications specialist from February through this month, actually.
Okay, Alderman York?
Yes, thank you.
Alderman Wagner?
I withdraw the question, but it's fostered another question. Why wouldn't that person that came in for the contract position align itself with the same part-time salary as the person that wasn't around? Why did we have to enter in a contract? Sorry.
We structured it as a contract in order to extend a special leave for the person who was in that position, in order for the person to come back as an employee and to simply be able to, with ease, end a contract with someone. Is that correct?
Okay. Alderman Leader?
I have a couple of questions. Regarding the part-time position that Alderman Healy referred to, which is, as I understand it, being funded by the foundation, I understand that the city has agreed to take over that obligation in the future. Is that clear on all part? Am I correct? So that eventually will be taken over by the city. It's not in this budget, but it will be in the next. Am I correct? Okay. Also, there's one unfilled position, isn't there, at the moment? That would be the position. I don't know if Crystal is still at the schoolhouse, or has she left?
Yes. And I'm sorry, I neglected to count that part-time employee. That's an
So
18-hour.
there would be, in addition to the 5 you mentioned, there are actually 6 because you're going to fill Crystal's job at the schoolhouse. Am I correct?
That's
So
correct.
there actually are 6. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that's an 18-hour-a-week position.
Pardon me?
That's an 18-hour-a-week position as
18-hour
well.
week, yes. Okay.
Alderman Gutenkopf?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm mindful of our time tonight, since we're already at 9 o'clock and we're still on only the first department that we're trying to get through tonight. I sense that some of this conversation around the part-time staffing at the Historical Museum has a point. And I just wanted to share my opinion about the part-time staffing at the museum, because I think we're getting an awful lot of staffing for a relatively reasonable price. I'm not particularly concerned that the city's taking on an extra 9 hours a week so that we can keep a department functioning over the weekend when most of our residents are probably free and able to access this resource. At the most, I think it's, what could it cost us, $100? You know, I think that at that level of conversation, we're getting into operational questions that we shouldn't be dwelling on. That I think the museum staff are perfectly capable of spending $100 a week without a whole lot of city council oversight. I think that we have a very capable staff. I think that the foundation should be commended for enabling the city to maintain a continuity of operations during a strong budget downturn, and now it's time for us to step up and take back positions that the foundation has so generously offered to fill so that we could keep this organization functioning at a high level. So I have no specific questions, but I do propose that in the interest of getting out of here before midnight, that we should, as a council, focus on some of the more substantive financial questions and move on past these part-time staff positions, none of whom receive benefits, all of whom are, dedicated city employees that are tremendous ambassadors for the city and what we do. So in the interest of getting out of here before midnight, I think we should either make a point about the part-time people or move on. Thank you.
Alderman Bram?
Thank you. I also want to start out by saying thank you to the foundation, for Kathy Jordan, for Brian as well. Over my tenure, I have been, well, to say it bluntly, critical of what goes on at the Historical Museum, especially when it comes to the budget timeframe and budget discussions. The past few budget cycles, I've been very maybe not very, but complimentary of the Historical Museum, because I have seen a definite turnaround. I have seen more of a drive for the private side funding the museum. I have definitely seen an increase in regards to the number of exhibits, the type of exhibits, and I think that actually does show up at the bottom line. I mean, there's additional revenue generated from the exhibits. There's other towns, City of Chicago being one, who wants to utilize the exhibits that we have done here at the City of Elmhurst. So kudos to everybody on the staff and everybody involved in that, because I don't want to gloss over that fact, because I think it's very important. But when I have looked at the budget in past years as well as this year, one of the concerns is the overall dollar amount, right? The overall dollar amount, if I exclude capital costs, or projected on page 167, if I remove what's projected, well, there's no capital cost for that year, but is $882,000 approximately. We talk about the fiscal year of 2012/2013. Again, removing the capital items because I think it's more of an apple-to-apple comparison. We're at about $725,000. That's, to me, a significant increase, an increase of about $160,000. And again, I'm excluding the capital, so I did some basic math there to come up with those numbers. It's not on a particular line item. And when I look at, on page 166, I think, again, doing basic math of full-time and part-time and all employee benefits, I come to what's projected in 2015 of approximately $536,000 and change just for salaries and benefits alone, which is over, I think, close to 2/3 of the amount that I quoted of the museum's budget. Again, I go back to the exhibits. I don't have an issue with adding additional dollars or seeing additional dollars to anything that draws more people to the museum, the exhibits, et cetera. I think it's a good thing. I think it draws more attention to Elmhurst. I think it draws people to Elmhurst, gives us more notoriety. What I want to just highlight is my concern of the cost of the staff as well as benefits is pretty significant chunk of change here when we talk about this budget, and it continues to grow. And I'm just making a statement, I'm not making a motion on this, but that is where, over the past years, I've really, really had some concerns over. The part-time position that's being added 9 hours a week, it seems trivial in the grand scheme, but if you look at what's estimated from 2014 to 2015, it's an increase, of $34,000, a 30% increase from the previous year. I agree with Alderman Gutenkauf's statement that you get more bang for your buck from a standpoint of, excuse me, utilizing part-time versus full-time. But I definitely want to highlight the fact that we're spending what I would deem to be a decent amount of dollars of staff/benefits out of this budget. The other thing, and that's just a comment and doesn't need to be responded to it all. The other thing, as a concern while I look at this overall budget, is from the standpoint of the Churchville Schoolhouse. And I believe that's on page 166, 50-01, for repairs and maintenance, I believe. I believe that was mentioned. Is that correct?
No, that account 5001 on page 166 shows repair and maintenance at the Historical Museum itself.
Not the schoolhouse.
That's correct.
Okay,
It's
wrote my
all-
notes incorrectly.
And I'm sorry, were you referring to the $20,000 or the 2015 projected of 27?
I was speaking more general to the line item itself. But yes, specifically to this upcoming year as well as at least last year. I thought some of those dollars were the schoolhouse. Am I incorrect or no?
No, last year, or 2014, they were not. 2015, it includes funds for painting at the schoolhouse.
And that is it?
Yes, the rest are for the Historical Museum itself.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And that kind of, to some degree, negates my question, but I'm a little bit concerned on the cost that the city of Elmhurst continues to invest in the schoolhouse. And I know it's not supposed to be, even though I think in past years it's been stated to be a revenue generator, but I'm kind of concerned over how much the city of Elmhurst puts out from the schoolhouse perspective, and if we get much, if any, revenue from that. Could someone speak to that, the schoolhouse particularly? Do we get any type of revenue from that? And what is the approximate maybe expenses last year versus this year?
Well, our schoolhouse is generally operated by the part-time school services staff person, and she conducts the programs at the schoolhouse as well as goes to schools and conducts programs in the museum. So there's an indirect cost for her time, her salary. The costs at the schoolhouse this year were minimal for repairs. Ongoing maintenance is, just like any other routine maintenance in a building. We do some programs at the schoolhouse that have a cost involved. And the school programs that are conducted at the schoolhouse do not have a fee associated for Elmhurst schools. When the city acquired the schoolhouse from District 205, an agreement was struck recognizing that Elmhurst schools would not be charged a fee for those services. Schools from outside of Elmhurst pay a $5 fee for a half-day program. We're attempting to continue to grow those schools from outside of Elmhurst, and we'll continue to do that. But they face some of the same pressures that Elmhurst schools face in terms of field trips right now.
Understood. And this is my last question, and this is actually on page 166, line item 30-12, consultant fees. Is that line item, is that the role or the position that Ken Bartels is currently in?
That's correct. That's the total cost of his consulting fees. 1/3 of that is funded through the Heritage Foundation grant each year.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Gudenkauf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to point out that part-time wages are in reality only up about $10,000, most of which I'm sure can be accounted for by annual salary increase, benefit increase. In fact, no, the 2014 budget was $134,000. They spent $113,000 on part-time wages this year because $24,000 of that money was not spent due to a staff person being out, and instead the money was reallocated to the contract staffing line. So when you add $113,000 and $24,000, the difference between that total and next year's projected total is roughly $10,000, not $30,000, because there's no contract staffing in the budget next year. So if you take the $10,000, subtract out a roughly 3% wage increase, what you're left with is about $115 a week, which can be accounted for by the 9-hour-a-week person. So we're back to talking about $100 a week, which I think is not significant, and I think we should just move on from the salaries. I mean, if you've got a bigger question about how the museum is staffed, then that's a functional question that we can talk about. But in fact, the dollar amount can clearly be accounted for by the fact that a staff person was on medical leave and a contractor was brought in to cover that. Again, we should be talking about much bigger dollar issues. These are pretty small.
You know, I didn't let the council know, and I'm remiss, but unless I don't state it, just assume that our target every budget evening is 10:30 or less. So direction to staff is 10:30 or less, so that means 10:25, not 10:35. So if you want to squeeze something in, maybe you don't, and make it 10:35. As it relates to what's relevant and what's not relevant to discuss, I'll leave that to the individual council members. Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, so I'll go to the second half of my questions, but before I move to the actual revenue generation, I would like to point out that, and I'm referring to the museum expenditure schedule that's on board docs, the line that shows net historical museum expenses. So basically, that line shows how much the city is actually contributing to the museum. So in 2010, 2011, that number was just short of $680,000. The projected amount for 2015 is $819,000, or just short of $820,000. So actual dollars spent by the city, coming from the general fund or whatever fund they're coming from, the city's contribution to the museum in 4 years, 4 to 5 years, has increased just short of $140,000, $139,396, or 20.5%. So, you know, this is a conversation about much more than $100 a week part-time workers. Now to my revenue questions. And Mr. Berghager, I appreciate you acknowledging the challenge that I laid out last year about revenue generation. I don't think there's any question that over the last few years, the museum has enjoyed a lot of positive press, additional foot traffic, a renewed sense of excitement in town, and that has a lot to do with the leadership, Brian, Lance, the whole staff. My concern is that we aren't adequately capitalizing or monetizing that revenue, or the possibility of revenue from actual operations. Again, the foundation is going to do what the foundation does and does very well. I'm interested in actual revenue generation from the operation of the museum. The decrease from this year to next year is discouraging, quite honestly. And I understand that the uptick in the last couple of years was because of some memorabilia, and you know, I talked to City Manager Grabowski today, and he informed me that some of that was Fred Lorenzen autographed memorabilia. I don't want to get into specifics of every exhibit and what the possibilities are, but I have a hard time thinking that a Cub Sox exhibit wouldn't generate at least as much revenue opportunity within the museum as a NASCAR exhibit does. So I'll get to a question. What was your goal for this year? What was your target? What did you hope to raise in terms of revenue from operations this year? So you heard the challenge last year. What was your, I know it's not budgeted, but what was your goal? What were you hoping to raise this year?
Well, our budgeted figures are in the budget book on page 106. And you can see the rental income for this year was budgeted. Actually, we did not budget any rental income. We didn't know if the exhibits would continue to travel. We had budgeted for the museum store $8,000, and we came in under that at $4,100 this year.
So can you talk about some of the actions that the museum staff undertook to increase the revenue? Was that a number that, where did the 8,000 come from? And halfway through the year, when it looked like you weren't going to hit any changes, I'm just trying to get a sense of what actions city staff, museum staff is taking to maximize revenue. That's really what I'm after here.
Mm-hmm. Well, the merchandise selection is a big part of the museum shop, and we need to have merchandise that is attractive to our market. With the Fred Lorenzen exhibit, for instance, we had diehard NASCAR fans who were interested in acquiring things associated with Mr. Lorenzen. This summer with the baseball exhibit, frankly, I was disappointed that we did not sell more. We didn't have those types of collector items, though, that sold so well for the Lorenzen exhibit and the Paul Natkin exhibit. Also, as I mentioned, our credit card system was down for most of the summer. We weren't able to facilitate credit card sales. That was due to new machinery coming in, and we lost sales, frankly, because of that, especially some larger sales. But we generally look at our audience and try to market those types of things that come out of the exhibit and are special, that can be purchased either in a limited number of places or at the museum itself. Those are the types of items that sell. The other type of item that seems to move really well are locally sourced materials. For instance, we have some tiles showing Elmhurst scenes that are created by an Elmhurst artist, ornaments associated with Elmhurst. And again, those may be available in some other locations in Elmhurst, but they're not widely available. Also this year, our public galleries are closed October through December, so we won't have that opportunity to make sales in the museum shop. I think I mentioned earlier that two of the ongoing issues that we have are facilitating online sales for the museum gift shop. Someone should be able to sit in St. Louis and buy something from our gift shop if they find themselves there. We're not able to do that online yet, and that needs to be done. Similarly, with our program registrations, we're not able to take program registrations online as of yet. So we partnered with the Park District to take those registrations, for instance, and process the fees. We need to be able to do that in-house for ourselves. So those are some things that we're working towards.
Okay. I remain concerned that the museum, the operation, that the museum is not taking advantage of the opportunities that are existing within the four walls of the museum. Again, foundation, great job, keep going. But the actual museum, the revenue generated from the operation of the museum, whether it is gift shop, program fees, what have you. Quite honestly, to hear that we were without credit card reading ability for, I think you said, a couple of months, in today's world, that's very concerning to me. And it just reinforces my belief that we are not doing everything we can to maximize the revenue opportunity. Because for me, what this is about, as it's always been about, is the amount of money the city is spending at the museum. That we're spending more money. The foundation is working their tails off to give us more money to spend, and that's a good thing, but the city's expenditure is going up too. I would like to see it get to the point where the museum starts to fund more of its own operation, more than $7,200 estimated or $11,300. And that was what my challenge was about last year. Now, I do appreciate the late hour, and I could probably go on for a while, but I'm not going to. But what I would request is that we make this a circle back item to give other aldermen a chance to look at some things and a chance for the staff to think about some of these questions and bring them back to the council in a couple of weeks, at which time, adjustment to the budget may be discussed. So I'd officially like to make this a circle back item.
Okay. Alderman Bram?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just one other comment as we make this a circle back item, I guess, just in general here. And I believe one of my colleagues requested the additional information, and it's been discussed in past years, the off-site storage. We don't have to dive deep into detail tonight, but I just wanted to give staff a heads up. That's always been a concern of mine on how much we utilize in regards to the square footage for off-site storage and what we keep. I know, I would say probably about 8 years ago, we talked about what the policy is, and I know that information was included as well. I don't recall exactly what it was said, but I think it's approximately 4,700 square feet that we lease for off-site storage for our collections. That's a significant space, at least in my mind, so when we do circle back to this item, I would like to dive a little bit deeper into that line item as well, on what can we do, or should we do something differently, and if so, what would that be in regards to off-site storage? Is it bringing it in-house somewhere? Is it reducing our collections overall to something more manageable? Another question that comes to mind really quick is, you know, out of that collection, how much of it is ever utilized? Do we use it for an exhibit? You know, is that 50%, or is 75% of it collecting dust for the last 10, 20 years, and we don't utilize it at all? So I'd like that to really get down in a little bit in the further details on that, because we keep every year having a lease for that, and 4,700 square feet is significant, and I think we should look at that a little bit in more depth. Thank you.
Before we move on, I want to clarify, so that's one specific circle back, I would say, that Alderman Bram has identified. Alderman Healy, I think your circle back was more in general. I don't know if I'd identify it to specific items. Is it just a circle back on the museum?
Well, I would say that my specific interest will remain revenue generation, specific plans, where the numbers for the 2015 budget came from. Are those good numbers? Are they optimistic? Are they pessimistic? Can we do more? And then also, and I didn't, the strategic plan was talked about a little bit. I didn't even get to my strategic plan questions. So I'll have additional questions on strategic plan. I heard the timing of January, but I'll have some questions specific to what is entailed in that strategic plan. And I've got some specific areas of interest, and I know other aldermen do as well, as what is exactly contained in that strategic plan. I mean, it's taken a while to finally put the thing together, and I'm glad to hear we're coming to completion, but I'm going to want to delve into that a little deeper as well.
Okay, I think that's clear enough. Alderman Levin.
Thank you. I just want to make a note, not just arguing any of the points that have been made, but it seems to me one of the significant changes in the expenditures from the city side of the budget is the interdepartmental charge, which is the data processing, which really, it's sort of an accounting adjustment that changes the world, which is beyond the control of the administration of the museum. So if you look at line 95, you'll see that it was in 2011-12, 35,000. In 2012-2013, it went to 61. If you annualize 2013, it was 70,000, and then the budget jumps up to 140. So that's a big change when I don't know that there's been a whole lot of additional services. It's just a reallocation of what they're doing, which should go into the mix when you look at the total of what the city is spending that's within the control of the particular department.
Okay. Any more comments, or can we move on? I don't see any additional comments. I want to thank Jordan and Brian Burhager for your time and your attention on this matter, and we will see you during the circle back round, playoffs. And thank you certainly to the foundation members for your hard work and for your time this evening. Really appreciate that. I understand. 2 aldermen, for the record. Check in with Mr. McLeister on the way out. City Manager Grabowski, that gets us through Historical Museum, agenda item C, if you will. On to fire protection, yes? Sticking with the schedule?
Correct, if we'd like to
Fantastic.
do that.
Look at firemen at work, helping out the physically challenged at this point.
During this.
Yeah, that's too easy. Ready to go? Chief, floor is yours.
The Elmhurst Fire Department continues to provide protection of life and property in the Elmhurst community. The continued commitment by you, the City Council, allows us to provide that responsive and superior public safety services to the Elmhurst community. In 2014, we will have responded to approximately 6,600 calls for service with an average response time of 4 minutes and 31 seconds. Over the years, the Elmhurst Fire Department has evolved into an all-hazard response organization that responds to many different types of calls for service other than fire and EMS. Responses include activated carbon monoxide alarms, hazardous material spills, odor investigation, down power lines, unfortunately flooded basements with electrical hazards, water rescues, accidents needing extrication like the truck extrication on Spring Road this past June. Because of their equipment and training, our firefighters are the best suited to respond to these types of requests for service. This coming budget year, we are proposing to replace one of our most expensive pieces of equipment, and that's our 1997 100-foot ladder truck, which has 100,000 miles on it. This piece of equipment not only carries the main 100-foot ladder, it also carries large ground ladders able to reach our larger homes in town when the main ladder cannot be used. I refer to this piece of equipment as a big toolbox with many different tools. Because of our all hazards responses, we never know what piece of equipment or tool we may need to deal with a certain situation. Not having the big toolbox there or only having a small toolbox without the proper tools can severely hamper our ability to deal with a certain situation. The other highlight is funds in the 2016 proposed line item for a second DUCOM facility. This is something I've talked about in the past. DUCOM is the largest consolidated dispatch agency in Illinois that dispatches 39 police and fire agencies. In the past 5 years, 12 new agencies have joined DUCOM. This consolidation is good for Elmhurst in that it spreads the operation costs amongst many different communities. For a consolidation to continue, more space is needed for dispatchers. During the past 2 years, DUCOM staff, executive board, board of directors, and police and fire chiefs have been working on a plan for location, construction, and funding of this proposed facility. In the 2014 budget, we did include some funds for this proposed second facility, but due to a more in-depth study of funding options, grants, and possible location, the project is not moving as fast as first expected. If approved by all agencies governing boards, the cost of the second facility would be spread over 20 years and would be in addition to the yearly operating costs for both police and fire. I thank you for enhancing the life of those who live and work in Elmhurst by supporting the fire department and its mission. I would also like to thank the dedicated firefighter and paramedics who hold devotion to duty above their personal safety and comfort while helping those in need in our community. I'd be able to, willing to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Any questions for Chief Bassador? Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, thank you for heading me off at the pass, if you will, in regards to my DUCOM questions that I pretty much ask every year. I guess I'll just say a side note to that, and the only side note is that, you know, they continue to increase. I understand it's a necessity. It's not a want, it's a necessity. But I think we just need to continue to do our due diligence in keeping an eye on those costs and seeing how we can have an influence there. And you also head me off at the pass in regards to the vehicle, so I won't even ask any questions on that. The only question I do have, which is on page 134, line item 30-75, and that's telephone. And I think this is more of a general question, because I look at the other parts of the budget, it seems to be I think a J form in every single section or most sections. What is the, I guess it does have a J form on page 136 description, but what is the rationale for an increase pretty much in every department for telephone service. Do you know, or maybe Director Gaston could speak to that?
I know this is going to sound odd, but since we generally over budget and don't under budget, but we, in 2014, our 2014 budget numbers are too low. If you look at our actual 2013, which was 8 months, we just budgeted too low. So you're comparing to a 2014 budget that's not realistic. So we really didn't do anything. We haven't changed anything. We just didn't budget well on this line. There, I've said it.
Yeah, no follow-up questions to that.
Yeah, I can't, I'm not making that up. We don't have any, we've looked at it, we recognize it, and that's it. When we compare to that actual, we didn't budget well.
Thanks.
Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be revenue generation boy tonight. Page 137, wireless radio alarm services. I want to make it basically a clarifying question, make sure I understand it. The expense is projected for 2015, $171,560. That's correct?
Correct.
Flipping to page 105, 26-00. Are we projecting to take in $539,500 in revenue for providing those wireless services? Is that correct?
Correct.
So in effect, 540 minus 170, that's revenue that's been generated as a result of that, of moving to that wireless radio system. That's correct?
Correct, and I will also remind you that this coming budget year is the last budget year to pay back the capital. So all of that, there's still some payback, and maybe, I don't know if Tom knows it off the top of his head. 120 of that next year will be going to pay back the capital, then it'll be all.
So in the 2016 projected budget, there's 120, so 2017, it'll be rough.
The 2015, there's 120, correct? And then the 2016, the capital will be paid back, all the money that.
So on page 137, the expense side, I don't see a $120,000 reduction in.
No, it's not.
Well, the expenses won't go down, the expenses stay the same.
Oh, okay.
The expenses stay the same, so.
So the paying back of that capital is somewhere else in the budget?
It's actually in the transfers from general fund to
Okay.
CAF fund, so we just net it out.
So in
of there.
effect, we're gonna do $120,000 better next year even than what we did this year.
Correct.
That's good news, thank you.
Alderman Levin.
Thanks, Chief. Of the 6,600 calls for service, can you tell me what percentage of those are actual fires?
A very small amount. I would, about 72%, 73% of all of our calls are EMS. Actual fires, I will say that the Elmhurst Fire Department goes a long way in stopping a lot of fires with its fire prevention, its public education. Nationwide, fires are down, but I say that's because over the last 50, 100 years, we've done a really good job of educating people and inspecting occupancies and getting rid of those things that cause fires. I always say that if we were to stop doing those things, you won't see an increase in fires tomorrow, you won't see an increase in fires next year, but over time, you're gonna see an increase in fires. So I say that we are doing our job. That's why the fires are down.
So 73 EMS, and what percentage would you estimate for actual fire?
Well, now, when you say fire, do you mean an actual burning structure?
Yeah.
I would say we do about 20 to 30 actual fires a year. The rest of those, when I talked about the other responses, the CO alarms, the, water, the hazards, electrical lines down, flooded basements, all that other stuff, all gets grouped into it.
Okay. The next question is really perhaps more for Marilyn, and just, can you explain to me again lines 2011 and 2012 on page 134?
Page 134, what were the line items, Alderman?
2011, 2012.
Okay.
It's not what I think it is, but
Line 2011 is actually the tax levy for the city's contribution to the fire pension fund.
okay. And that's the part that's mandated by the state?
Yes.
And then 2012, the replacement tax portion of that is?
There is a replacement tax, a personal property replacement tax that the city receives that is also allocated to, how do I want to put this? Because it's also allocated to the library based on their percent of the total levy. Am I correct? So it's the fire pension portion as a percent. If they're 10% of our total levy, they get 10% of the personal property replacement tax.
So this is a contribution that we're making out of our funds for what's levied for maybe the library? Or against what the library's percentage would be?
No, if we get $1 million as for the whole city, and library is 10%, they're going to get 10% of the million, and so it's whatever percent you are of that million, you're going to get that part of it.
All right, I'm gonna talk to you about that offline, but I get the
Okay.
gist of it. But so the big number on 2011, those are our pension contributions. And what's the basis for projecting them into, how do you pick a number to project from 2014 estimated into 2015 and 2016? Because I see a very large number in 2016 increase over 2015.
And I believe it's a 5% increase.
Okay.
And that's just our educated guess as to what's going to happen for the pension contributions.
Okay.
And you will also see a revenue on the revenue side. So to the bottom line of the general fund, it's no impact.
Okay.
So it's just
And it's
an
a
offset.
cost to the property taxpayers,
Yes, absolutely.
but it's not coming into our budget for.
Right.
I get it.
It's
Okay.
coming in on our budget, and then it's immediately going out
All right,
to
thank
the
you.
pension fund. You'll see the same thing when we get to the police budget.
Very good, thanks.
Other questions? Alderman Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Alderman Levin brought up the occurrences and the calls that you run and how many are fire-related. It reminded me of, when we had paper sheets that would come in weekly, there was a monthly report that was given on those, and it'd be nice to restart that again. I don't exactly know what happened when we went electronic. A lot of those reports kind of went away, but that information was given out on a monthly basis, so note to self. In terms of the wireless radios, Chief, how many businesses are left, or maybe even residentials are left? What kind of runway do we have left? 500,000, I don't have the numbers in front of me.
We're
It
up-
seems pretty healthy. It's exactly where
We're up
thought
to
about.
520 alarms this year.
Yeah.
Next year, we're doing about 20 more every year.
Okay,
I can't give you, I have no idea how many else are out there. We don't put them in homes, it's only for businesses. So it's doing better than we ever projected as far as adding. We didn't think we'd be adding as many as we are, but we are adding more, about,
Yeah.
like I say, approximately 20 a year. So it's a very successful
The margin
program.
seems to be starting to really kind of make a major dent, which is great. Have you seen a decrease in false alarms?
We have seen a decrease, especially because we've gotten rid of the phone line, because it's wireless.
Yeah.
We would have a lot of problems. We would pull up on a scene, we would see the phone company sitting out there, and right away we knew somebody slipped with a screwdriver and crossed, and so those have went away.
Good, that was the idea, so, nice job, thank you. In terms of the truck, I don't have a question, I just would like you to maybe debrief the council a little bit on some of the, at least over maybe the last 12 months, the problems that we've had with that truck in particular. It's been in the shop more often than it's on the road.
Right.
The parts are becoming sparse, and it's very difficult, so it's getting very costly, and I think Elmhurst has such a reputation, whether it's, the police or the fire. It'd be nice to make sure we maintain that.
It is a complicated piece of equipment. There's a lot of safeties involved in it, and what we're finding now, and just as when this truck was bought in 1997, the truck it replaced was only 15 years. By the time, if you choose to, fund this, when we replace this, it will be 18 years old. So we're getting 3 more years out of this one than we did the last one. But our mechanics do a fantastic job of keeping them on the road, but it takes more. It used to be they could take it out of service and do preventive maintenance that would take a day or two. Now, it's nothing for that truck to be down a month. We're starting to see it being out of service a lot more and a lot longer. It really does us no good sitting out the garage out of service. And one of the things we're finding is they're having a hard time getting parts. They're having to make parts. The companies can make them. They don't have them sitting on a shelf. So consequently, we had one that was out of service. The other ladder truck was out of service for 3 weeks waiting for lights to be made because they didn't make the old lights. So they had to make them, or they had to find them, and we had to retrofit them on the truck, and it took 3 weeks. Bad having a truck out of service just for that. So it's coming down to the out of service time is becoming unacceptable.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Yes, City Manager Grabowski, you want to add to the conversation?
I do. Alderman Wagner raises a good opportunity for me to remind the council that under the library tab in board docs, the monthly department reports are posted there. And as part of the fire, the statistics that Alderman Wagner was looking for are on that.
Good to know.
Never knew that. My computer doesn't.
Alderman York.
Thank you, Your Honor. Chief, if you could, you and I had a discussion earlier today about the equipment we have. Elmhurst is blessed to have not just one 100-foot ladder truck, but 2 of them. Kind of similar to the library discussion, I just feel like, that Elmhurst is a net giver of services and equipment. If you spread it out on a table and look at it holistically, can you just give a briefing on kind of like how our equipment fits into what's available around us? I mean, one night I was driving back from the city and I saw our truck sitting over in Hillside waiting to respond to a call. Now, if we'd had a call there and we only had 1 truck, we're over there. Is there anybody else around us that's got this kind of equipment that can help us?
They do, but, in the past, especially when we hit hard budget times, you use Villa Park as an example, they got rid of their truck. We got some other departments that are thinking about getting rid of their truck. Oak Brook just finally purchased one after going without one for 5 years. The other issue is even if they do have this piece of equipment, we can't guarantee that they staff it. A lot of them have lost staffing over the years. So just because you drive by that station, you see that ladder truck sitting in that station, doesn't mean that if we call it at a moment's notice, they're gonna be able to respond with it. And, we used to say fire doubles in size every 60 seconds. Now it's every 17 seconds because of the way furniture and the things that are made out of hydrocarbons now, how fast and how hot a fire burns today. So for us, Elmhurst has always been one that we've relied on ourselves first. We've always been self-sustaining. We do get a lot of help with mutual aid, especially with ambulance calls, because the amount of ambulance calls, 72% of our calls, our 2 ambulances are busy. Our firemen go out, they're first responders, they have AEDs, they are trained to EMTB basic level. They stabilize that patient, and a mutual aid ambulance comes and helps with that patient. I think that's more important than worrying about our ladder truck going over and sitting in Hillside, which Hillside helps us out a lot. If those that remember the Spring Road fire, if it wasn't for Oak Brook Terrace and Hinsdale with their ladder trucks, we had ours there, but they were helped us out a lot with keeping that fire to that one building with their ladder truck. So do we send it out a lot? Do we do a lot of mutual aid? We do, but we also get it back, and we get it back more in ambulance calls than we do anything else. And I think that, to me, is the most important. Life safety is always, in the fire service, life safety is always the #1 tactical priority, is protecting that life. So, yes, it seems unfair, but when somebody comes up with a way to figure out how to make it more fair, let me know, because it's a thing that everybody struggles with.
Thank you. I just appreciate the explanation.
Alderman Brand?
Yeah, just going along those lines, I think Alderman York brought up a very good question. Mutual aid, you know, theoretically, always seems like it's a good thing helping one another out. And Chief, thank you for that explanation, because it does seem that Elmhurst goes to other communities more so, at least perception, more so than we get assistance. But I think you explained it very eloquently that, you know, the benefits are there for Elmhurst, even though we might see maybe one piece of equipment being the ladder truck or something else in another community. Holistically, if you look at it overall, I think that we get just as much benefit compared to the other communities that we're in agreement with. One question I had in regards to the monthly reports, not necessarily for the chief, is that those reports also on the public side of board docs as well accessible, or is it just on the elected official side?
Since I'm logged in, I don't know, but I would have to look at that. I would think that they're on the public side. There's no reason that they wouldn't be on the public side. And if they aren't, then we'll change that.
Okay, I just think it's good information. I know Alderman Palomsky and myself have presented in some form at one of our town halls some of this information, and I think it's good to be able to share this or have the residents take a look at it to see exactly what is involved within the city of Elmhurst.
Any other questions for the, Chief Bassador? Seeing none, we're going to move on. I want to thank Chief and the entire department for all their hard work and your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
City Manager Grabowski, on to, did we cover wireless radio?
Yes, we did.
We did?
Well, he did.
The opportunity was there to ask questions. If there's additional questions, though, we'd be happy to answer them.
Next year.
Otherwise, we would move on to Public Works.
I think we covered that one pretty well, yes? Yes? The only capital project that's ever paid us back, yes? Very happy about that, okay. Sorry, City Manager Grabowski, where are we going now? 138?
We would move to page 143.
143. We did D, E, and F there.
Yes, Public Works.
143.
Nice comment.
You looking up fire statistics there, City Manager Grabowski?
I
or-
was looking up the monthly reports. They are on the public site.
Fantastic. Asked and answered.
And they only go to
Excellent.
July, though. You might want to,
All right.
yes.
We will get the remainder of those up.
Back to page 144, yes?
Time to read the
143.
I will turn it over to Howard.
Welcome, Howard, to your first budget.
First budget meeting.
Experience.
And I do apologize right off the bat that a lot of this, fortunately, was put together with Corey, Kent, and Gary. And for questions, they will be providing a lot of the backup. They've tried to get me up to speed as much as possible. It's been a very busy 4 weeks here at the city. Looking back at Public Works, if you look back over the last year and a half of what we're facing with as major projects, we're coming off the third snowiest winter ever. And that was, look at the overtime and the salt usage and the responses that we're adjusting our operations to that. We're also dealing with the major stormwater flooding issues and those projects moving forward. And again, we're all aware of the consent order, which is a lot of projects and taking up a lot of staff's time. What I'll try to do tonight is focus on some major issues of the different Public Works, different budget account numbers. So we'll move forward from there. In admin and engineering, you have your stormwater projects are pretty much our major focus right now, besides all of our development, all the review, all of the capital projects that this group runs in-house. Some of the other major projects they'll be working on this next year is the Addison Avenue parking deck, along with the Addison Avenue Street project, reconstruction of that. They will also be heavily involved, and I'll go over them a little bit later, but with all of our roadwork projects that'll be coming up this year. In that account number, one of the big increases we have, and pretty much the only one, is our memberships you'll see in there. We do show some membership increases. The memberships are mainly for the DuPage Salt Creek watershed group. If you remember, this is a group that helps us with water quality and the environment along the Salt Creek, and also helps us with the EPA and a lot of projects in dealing with those. One of the new items this year is proposed, there's a $49,000 expenditure for our share of a new phosphorus study. What that is the EPA is planning, with all of our wastewater treatment plants, the word is that they're going to start addressing phosphorus discharge from all the plants. That discharge is very costly for an individual plant to address, into the hundreds of thousands of dollars annually. What the watershed is working with is a kind of a new concept with the EPA, where they were teaming up all the wastewater plants in the communities along the creek to work together to come up with a better solution to control phosphorus in the creek, which again, the 49,000 compared to the several hundred thousand over the next years is definitely a benefit to the city to be a part of that. In Public Works streets, you see some major increases. We are increasing the residential stormwater reimbursement program. That is increasing $50,000, and that is to get more residents involved with the reimbursement programs. Roadway maintenance, some of the major considerations in that department. We have asphalt patching is up $15,000 this year, raising a total to $85,000, and a lot of that is catching up with the harsh winter weather that we had last year. Our ceiling is also up $50,000 this year, up to $125,000. And again, that is due mainly to the increased paving that we've been doing, the maintenance that goes after those paving programs, and our public parking lots. Some of the other items in dealing with the infrastructure, the flooding that we've experienced, the storm sewer cleaning is proposed to go up $300,000. Again, that is cleaning and televising of our larger storm sewers within the city, and that puts that expenditure up to $750,000 this coming year. The roadway construction, we're showing up $840,000, bringing that total to just a little bit under the $4 million mark. Some of our major projects in there are the North York project, which is from Lake to Crestview, First Avenue from Willow to West, and those are, again, STP funded grants where we do receive 70% of the funding, responsible for the other 30%. We will be looking at South York from Van Buren to Lexington, moving into design phase this year. And as you remember, a previous discussion by the council, concrete street paving is going up to $450,000 this year. The next one we have is snow and ice removal. Following up last winter, you're all aware we kind of have a new street supervisor, a new assistant public works director, and myself here new. We're looking at a lot of new concepts, anti-icings, liquids, other items to try to save the city money, at the same time improving our response to the residents and the public. Some of the major items in that line item this year, we do have 6 replacement plows. Those are just the plows themselves, not the plow trucks. They really took a beating last winter. We also have in there $315,000 for 2 pieces of equipment, mainly used for our snow removal from the downtown. And that is the big snow go for the loading the trucks, and then the trackless, which is used for removing sidewalk snow. The next item we have is forestry. We have contractual tree trimming is up $25,000, and that is for us to be able to maintain our 7-year cycle for the trimming of parkway trees. We're proposing to move tree purchases up to 700 this year, up from the 539 that were planted this year. And that increases the tree purchase itself up $57,500, and the planting of those is up $21,500. In the electrical division, we'll be replacing 75 poles. Again, that's pretty much regular maintenance. But we're also going to be looking at a new program to start replacing the old direct bury lines to improve their reliability, along with reviewing some of our streetlight fixtures to try to go to more energy-saving fixtures. Building maintenance, no major projects, but we do have a lot of miscellaneous carpeting, gutters, and those items that they'll be working on. And the last item out of the fleet itself is the only increase we really see moving forward this year is our diesel fuels. We're showing an increase for that. So that's kind of the quick overview of Public Works. On my own, it's a pleasure being here. Staff has been very helpful to me, not only in Public Works, but throughout the city, and welcoming me and getting me up and running. And again, I'll try to answer as much as I can, but we'll be relying on Corey, Kent, and Gary to answer the questions I can't.
Okay, thank you. Comments for Public Works, comments or questions? Alderman Levin.
Thank you, and welcome again. I have just a few quick questions. One is on page 150, line 1003, snow removal, ice control overtime. I see that 2014 was way out of budget. I think Marilyn really underestimated that. But that being as it is, my question, though, is it was a very unusual year, particularly when you look in the past years we have, even on this sheet. I'm wondering why we're putting, if the budget was 267 and 231 and annualized in 2013, shouldn't this really be in a contingent fee as opposed to expecting another superstorm, or do we have some information that would suggest that this is going to happen again?
Basically, when we looked at this line item, it is just an estimate, and we went back 7 years and looked at the history and just used a 7-year average.
Okay. May I ask a couple more
Yeah.
questions? All right. And then on page 151, under the bottom, the mobile equipment, I understand what the money is for, the 315, but are these pieces of equipment that just happen to reach the end of their useful life this year, or they wore out because of the snow, or they?
A little bit of both. They're reaching the end of their useful life, and last winter really wreaked havoc on a lot of the public works equipment.
So those are being completely replaced?
Yes, those are replacements.
All right. And then the other question was on page 157, at the top, electricity, line 3024. I see we're going up significantly, but doesn't the change to the LED lights have any savings that offset the increased costs? And I wasn't sure how there's increased volume, or is there a reason we're using more electricity?
No, it just costs more.
Most of the increase is due to the cost increase and stuff. As Finance Committee just discussed today, our electric aggregation program and stuff, our earlier rate was 4.8 cents with our first 2-year contract. It went up to 7.51. So there was basically a 50% increase in the cost of electricity
So
that
not
we've
much really-
experienced.
So the volume really is not a,
It's mostly the price increase.
okay.
And on that also, we really haven't moved really in-depth into a lot of LED lighting at this time. We are looking at the 2 decks, but one of the proposals in here to again start looking at our other streetlight fixtures to LED.
Okay.
So that's something we're moving forward towards.
Those are my questions, and good job for what you guys did through last winter. Thank you.
Alderman Wagner.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for recognizing me. Appreciate that.
Right over there.
Real simple, it's not so much about the budget, I'm more concerned about, we've seen a decrease in the fuel costs overall. I know we have an annual contract, I'm just wondering what the lag, as we go into the 2015 timeframe. I don't see fuel costs, I don't see the projection of them increasing anytime soon, so I'm just wondering who's, is Chanel on that, or, I mean, there's been a dramatic decrease in the cost.
We do have a joint purchase. I know historically, estimating fuel costs throughout the year, I think, is really a tough item. I don't think at the time budget was prepared, anybody even realized that we'd be dropping at this point.
It's reflecting what we've currently purchased and then Chanel's experience in the trends. The best guess.
Okay. I just don't think, since I've been on the dais, we've got a decrease in fuel like we're seeing right now, because as the United States becomes more energy independent, it's playing effect on the marketplace. So,
Right.
I just would like to make sure that, I'm sure you guys are, but just, it's noted. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Healy?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think the question is appropriate now, but I want to make sure I ask it just so I'm not told later on we should have asked it, or I should have asked it now. So, stormwater improvement, any project related to stormwater, would that be appropriate to discuss now, or is that a capital expenditure? Specifically, City Manager Grabowski, you mentioned the $1 million earmark or potential $1 million earmark for home acquisition that the mayor and Alderman Honquist have previously brought up. Is that appropriate to discuss now, or is that during capital?
I think it would be best under the capital project fund, which is letter K.
Thank you.
Alderman Gutenkopf?
Thank you. So I want to go back to page 151, the mobile equipment again, because,
Alderman Gutenkopf, can you speak to the microphone, please?
sorry. I'd like to go back, I want to go back, is it picking me up? It doesn't sound like it. Page 151, the mobile equipment, I understand the trackless with broom, is that the city center sidewalk removal equipment? So is this perhaps an opportunity for us to look more closely at the arrangement we have with city center, with the snow removal, who's responsible for it, and how that works? Because I know they've got, they have snow removal contracts, and is there overlap with their snow removal of city center and what we're doing? How does all that work?
With the trackless. Public Works does one pass with the trackless at the beginning of the storm or as soon as there's some accumulation, and after that, it goes to the city center for full removal of the sidewalks.
And do we have a sense of what that one pass per storm costs us? And if we don't have that, I certainly would like to put that on the circle back, because I think this is an opportunity for us to take a look at the whole snow removal contract and the fact that we're looking to invest in more equipment. And, you know, so the total cost of the equipment we're planning to buy plus the cost of the manpower for something that they seem like they're also doing, I think is worth, further discussion. Then I have a second question.
Okay.
On page 161, in the,
151?
no, 161, page 161 in the building account 50-01, city center fountain maintenance and repairs in this. Do we have a breakdown of how much what that piece is?
Are you talking about
Under,
item C on page 161?
yes.
Okay,
Under
and you want a
building?
breakdown of $118,000?
13,000 for the city center fountain,
And is that,
part of the 98,000.
and so annual routine maintenance for the fountain is 98,000, or for everything is 98,000?
For everything, for the HVAC at the Public Works Garage, repair and maintenance of city-owned fountains, including the city center fountain. The city center itself is 13,000.
Okay.
That total cost is 98, all of those.
So is that city center fountain cost just annual maintenance of that fountain, or is there a project that we have marked for
That's just
that?
annual maintenance.
That seems like a lot. Just to keep that fountain going. Does that include, is that whenever it gets soap bubbles, do we have to go in and clean it or drain it? Is that in there too? Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Alderman Deuter?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to clarify the circle back that Alderman Gutenkopf identified, I think in asking for some more information about the snow removal, if we could ask City Center specifically what their vendor would charge additionally if we were not doing that first pass. And just the background for adding that specific question, there was a representative from one of the residential properties that are part of City Center, and they had asked their vendor that same question. Their vendor's response was actually he might consider charging less because the way that first pass moves the snow around, it actually makes his job harder as he comes through to remove the snow. Different scenario, was a smaller space and it was in a residential area as opposed to our downtown area, but you know, to back up what Alderman Gutenkopf is saying, if we saw something similar where it would be a very small increase if we did not do that first pass, that might be something important to consider. I have an additional question, if I can ask
Absolutely.
another question. On page 146, 30-08 is alley maintenance. I just want to know generally what the city's plan is for maintaining alleys, and then in 2013, the short fiscal year was $20,000 more than our 12-month years, and I'm just wondering what happened in that short fiscal year.
The alleys, I can't speak to the 2013 total, but for the years going forward, they're prioritized basically like the streets are. So the ones that are in the worst condition get done next, and so it's just within that $60,000.
And is it patching or repaving, or what
This
do
is
we?
actually for paving.
For paving. Okay.
On the second part of that question, we're going to have to get back to you on that one as far as the increase in the 2013 budget.
I have a question about the, just to go back, 2 questions ago about the, whatever it is, the wireless sweeper, or whatever that thing is called. Trackless sweeper. Does the city utilize that outside of city center anywhere?
No. No.
Okay. Trackless and wireless. Alderman Palomsky.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question on page 150 about 40-47, sand, chloride, and abrasives. I'm curious to know the process to decide what materials to use. Is that something that's done at the staff level? I'm just curious about environmentally what, what the choices are and what the cost difference would be for something that may be safer and how that's determined.
That's one thing right now we're looking at is what liquids we're actually using. We're looking at pre-wetting our salt with a different type of liquids that'll increase its efficiency, but at the same time reduce our usage of the salt itself. So that's one thing that Corey and I have made a priority over the last week and a half, that we're starting to have those discussions and move forward on that. But we will be bringing forth a plan that will be showing what we're proposing to move forward with.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Bram.
Well, that was good. You weren't even looking this way. Unless you were calling someone on that side, Alderman Bram.
Just keeping you on your toes, Alderman Bram.
So, before I ask my specific questions, Alderman Deuter and Alderman Gutenkopf made the circle back, and one thing I just want to throw out there in regards to the city center or downtown snow removal. One of the questions I think we also should consider or have back for when we discuss this as a circle back is the timeliness, right? So, I think the timeliness, when we own our own equipment, we can do it whenever our staff is available, compared to if we contract out. I'm not sure on how efficient, how quick we'll be able to get those same services to be able to clear the downtown area so we can have shoppers, et cetera, down there and continue our sales tax revenue. So that's just one thing that I think to add to that discussion on timeliness. How quick can we do it from a city staff perspective normally, and how quick from a contractor perspective will we be able to do it on top of the money aspects of it all? Question on page 143. Excuse me, 2 questions on page 143. Excuse me. Under contractual services, line 30-26, engineering, it's been consistent at $80,000 for the budgeted as well as the past year or two. Is this for, well, I'm not even going to ask the question. What is this engineering dollars for?
It includes assistance with plan review during the crunch times in the spring and then the fall. It also includes any expert traffic engineering review that we need. And it's kind of a miscellaneous catch-all for some of these smaller drainage projects and studies that we've needed to do.
Okay, so it's pretty much standard operating going forward, we foresee it? Because it seemed to increase significantly since 2000, whatever that is, 13. Understood. And then the other question on that line item is, on that same page, is 30-92. Is that the one? Contract staffing, what was that for? I don't see it projected in the future. Or is it an accounting thing?
That was for the contract with the Public Works Director, Steve Weinstock.
Thank you. For capital outlay, we said we're gonna take care of all those questions later in K, correct? Okay. I don't think I have any additional questions. Thank you.
Any other questions? Alderman York.
Thank you, Your Honor. First of all, just under forestry, I'm glad to see that we've got increased expenditures there for tree trimming and tree replacement. I think it doesn't take an arborist to look around town and see that we're creating some real gaps in our canopy because of the most recently, the ash borer. Certainly the Dutch elm is still a real problem, but I just think that's a really good increase of expenditures to maintain what Elmhurst is all about. Was there any thought given, consideration given to a reinstatement of Dutch elm disease prevention? I know at one point in time before the dreaded economic crisis, we had a Dutch elm disease program, cost share, I think, with residents for injecting the trees. Is that something that's ever been considered?
As far as the Dutch elm disease injection program goes, the results of those studies have been inconclusive to be able to say whether it actually has helped or not helped. So staff isn't recommending implement that again.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Another question, and maybe city manager can help me out. I think it's probably going to be somewhere in 143, but I know we've had conversations about projects related to marking for bicycle routes and sharrows and things like that. And what I was wondering, because I think there are some funds in here, they're kind of maybe commingled in some line items, but I think as we continue to move further along, seeking recognition for and perhaps grant dollars for monies that are available for alternative transportation, it might not hurt to have a breakout of resources that we're planning to put towards those types of things in a separate line item versus having them commingled in there. So I would like to ask you to perhaps look through these, and we can circle back for it if you want, and see if we could kind of break out some of those, what I would consider to be minor expenditures. I don't think they're much more than $20,000 or anything like that, but if we could do that, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Circle back.
Yes.
Alderman Dunn.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. On the page 152, the forestry, notice just looking year to year, the top two categories of personal services and employee benefits tending to add up to around the same dollar amount, $900,000 or so. And on the bottom, the contractual services have gone from about 300,000 up to about 600,000. So I'm interpreting from that we are doing more, but it's generally all moved to the contract side. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
Another quick question on 158. We have a replacement of some energy efficient lighting. It's rather large increase, I guess, from previous years. Is there an ROI on doing that? Did we calculate how long it would take to pay for those with the energy savings?
That's one of the things we're looking at right now, is we're working on the engineering with that, and there are possibly some grants out there that we're looking to take that over. So it's all part of the study before we select a fixture.
Okay, so grant would substitute for the city actually paying for those. Do we know if it take, doesn't matter who's paying for it, but what is the return on that? Do we have any idea, or do you need to get back?
We'll need to get back with you on
Okay.
that. We're still studying that right now.
All right.
Back to trees for a minute. I think a couple of years ago, when we were faced with this ash borer situation, I think the estimate was we have 4,000 4,000 ash trees in town, and the plan at the time was 400 trees a year for 10 years. Can someone give me an update of where we are in that? And also the question, I think some of it's coming more noticeable, maybe it's in the fall when the ash starts losing their trees and it looks terrible, but does the city rely on the public to inform them of ash trees that are kind of falling apart? Can you just give an update on where we are in our cycle of replacement?
As far as noticing ash trees, it's a little bit of both. Definitely public calls, but we do have staff that go out and look at trees and do call those in.
And where are we?
That we're checking on that part right now.
Okay, all right. It could be on the circle back, but if you get the answer tonight, great. Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to follow up on Alderman Dunn's question for on page 158, the replacement of the light fixtures budgeted for $150,000 for 2015 and 2016. Is that just a 2-year project, or would that be an ongoing cost for multiple years? And if multiple, beyond 2016, any idea how many?
It's ongoing, and it'll be identified when we do the engineering. It's gonna
Okay.
be sections.
And then similar question about an ongoing, how many years an expense would be on page 157, the conduit for the streetlight wires? How many years would that be?
That'd be the same thing. We're evaluating it, and it'll be a longer plan once we finish up the engineering.
Okay.
Alderman Bram.
Thank you. In regards to the Dutch elm disease, I don't know, it's probably been a while, a few years ago, the DED injection, we as a council, after hearing from staff, decided not to continue that program since it was inconclusive. I just want to say that that was vetted, I don't know, probably 6 years ago or something along those lines. One of the things I want to highlight more from a public standpoint is the things that we are increasing funding on, which is a good thing. As one example only, so I won't go into the wee hours of the night, on page 146, storm sewer cleaning under contractual services. You know, the increase, proposed increase, I should say, is from 450,000 to 750,000. You know, we continue to talk about flooding and all the things that are a necessity to resolve some of our issues, but I wanted to highlight that we as a city are taking steps to do everything in our power and allocating the appropriate funds to do so. I don't remember what page, 157, and that's the justification form, but about lamps, about the LED lights, I know some have already asked about that question. I thought in past years, all of the city street stoplights are, or traffic signals, I should call them, are LED. What do we have remaining that is not LED?
They are all LED. This is now, these dollars are to replace the LED lights within the signals.
Okay, so it's just replacing the light itself and not...
It's maintenance.
Gotcha. Going back and forth here, I lose my place. Mayor, I will get back if there's any additional questions.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing no other questions. Alderman Bram, how's your hunt going?
I cannot find my additional questions, so I have no others at this time.
Okay, well, I know for a fact that I have at least 11 or 12 minutes worth of conversation and questions on the municipal utility fund, which means we're not going to get to it tonight, because that would put us past 10:30. Would you agree, City Manager Grabowski? I would agree with that. Okay. Any other questions or comments before I ask for a motion to adjourn? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Alderman York, second by Alderman Mulliner. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.